Hello everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Callie Ochnicki, and I am a Customer Success Associate at YCharts. Hosting our webinar today is my colleague Rushi Shah, a Sales Engineer at YCharts. For today's webinar, we're going to be discussing how to leverage portfolio holding tools within YCharts. Throughout the webinar, we'll have a live Q&A via chat. You can enter questions in the questions section in the lower right-hand corner of the webinar. We will do our best to answer all questions in a Q&A session after Rushi's demonstration. Any questions that are not answered during the Q&A session will be answered by your support contact. Please keep in mind that the content of this webinar is meant for educational purposes only and is not intended to be used as investment advice, nor is YCharts acting as an advising party regarding client funds in any way. Finally, as always, a recording of the webinar will be made available on the website and sent to all attendees. Now I'm going to pass it off to Rushi to get us started.
Thanks, Callie. Welcome, everyone. My name is Rushi Shah, and I'm a sales engineer here at YCharts. A lot of familiar faces on the list of attendees today, so I'm pretty excited to talk to you guys a little bit more about YCharts and our Excel add-in. So let's get started. Just a little agenda here for today. We're going to start off by talking about market trends using our fundamental charting tool. Next, we're going to go into Excel and really dig into two of our main templates. The first one is the two-page portfolio overview template, and lastly, the side-by-side portfolio comparison report. The really cool thing about both of these is you'll see how our Excel add-in really works, and you'll see how you can optimize your portfolio analysis. And lastly, which is kind of exciting, we've been going through a lot of changes and a lot of product updates on YCharts. One of our biggest product releases is coming out next month, and it's called Model Portfolios. And we're going to give a little preview of that at the end of the webinar, which is pretty exciting. So stay tuned for that. That'll be towards the end of today's call. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I wanted to kind of, go over a example analysis that a lot of you might be doing with your clients. And here's like a current sample portfolio where you have about 10 holdings. It's kind of 50-50 equity and fixed income, and you have a client come in that is concerned about the yield curve, some Fed changes, raising rates. Maybe they're seeing a lot of things that are on the news and wanting to make some changes to their portfolio. And the other big thing that I kind of wanted to go over and use our charting tool as a tool is the retail space. So, we're seeing a lot of things with companies like Amazon and a lot more e-commerce going on compared to brick and mortar stores that might be closing down or seeing a bit of a negative effect there. So that'll be another portion of the analysis that we'll do today. So let's start off with the yield curve. This template or this graph here is actually from one of our Excel templates, and I'll show later on where you can find it. But basically, it's just showing the yield curve from today, 1 year ago, and 5 years ago. The biggest thing here that's pretty clear on this chart is you can see the flattening of the yield curve. You can see where the shorter-termed interest rates are rising, whereas the longer-term ones are staying a bit more steady. This has been in the news a lot lately because it kind of makes you ask the question of how can I reposition my portfolio to be in the right position for something like this to happen. So a lot of people are saying, a big thing that you can do is potentially lower your duration. So maybe, going back to this portfolio that we have here, AIBNX, which is a bond institutional fund, maybe we want to look at how we can change that for something else that might potentially have a lower duration there. So I'm going to jump right into our fundamental charting tool and talk a bit about how we can run that analysis. So another cool thing about our fundamental charting tool is we're actually going through a revamp in the design of that. A lot of you might not have seen this new charting tool, but this is how it's going to look in the next few weeks here, which is pretty exciting. This is just another sample 10-2 Treasury spread chart. I wanted to pull this up because it kind of tells you the same story that the yield curve is telling. A lot of those spreads on shorter term rates versus longer term rates is really tightening up. And as you can see on this chart, you have the recessionary periods in there that really show where those spreads are tightening up and what's going on with the market as a whole. So this is a cool analysis there. Maybe this reaffirms the fact that we want to take a look at that duration of our portfolio. Next, I want to kind of shift gears and look at our, our retail space market. So I'm going to open up another fundamental chart that I like looking at when I'm looking at the retail market. Now, this is simply tells a pretty big picture of where we're headed and where the growth is in the retail space. In the last 5 years, you're seeing that e-commerce sales have grown around 86.5% compared to just regular retail sales being closer to 20%. So if I insert that one holding that we have in our portfolio that we're looking to change, which is XRT, I'm really seeing that that's closely following more so what the retail space is doing, whereas we might want to look at something else potentially to insert in place of that. So through some different analysis and different ways to kind of look at potential securities, you might use our screener, you might just do some research on what follows e-commerce a bit closely. Another example I have is a ETF called RTH, which is more of an e-commerce kind of ETF. Now, I love this chart because you can clearly see that that RTH ETF is closely following the e-commerce sales, whereas the one that was originally in the portfolio, XRT, is closely following the retail space and the brick and mortar space. So maybe that's another shift that we're going to make in our portfolio. Now, going back to the fixed income portion where we want to look at how we can shorten that duration, I'm going to jump into our comp tables tool. So when you hover over tools at the top here, you can click on comp tables. Now, the great thing about this is I can go ahead and open up a metric set that I have saved based on fixed income and based on duration. So I have this duration analysis metric set here, and I'm going to throw in that fund that we were looking at earlier. Now, maybe I have another fund that's very similar to this one that I'm potentially looking at getting into, and I'm just going to throw that into the comp tables as well. As you can see, it's a limited duration fund, so it kind of goes for what I'm going for here to lower that duration. I love the comp tables tool because you can clearly see different metrics and compare and contrast different funds that you're looking at. I'm looking at the effective duration here, which is the first column, and you can see how much lower it is for AISTX. And maybe that's another change we're going to make to our portfolio and something you would want to do there. So it's a great tool when you're talking with clients, maybe when you're doing your analysis, you want to quickly and clearly see the difference there. So now that I know those two changes, one is changing out that retail ETF and the other one is changing out this bond fund, I can jump into Excel and do a bunch more of analysis within my portfolio to really see where it's at. So I'm going to go and hover over Tools and click on Excel. Now, when you get to this page, there's a few things here. Here's like a download page where you can get started if you haven't had the add-in downloaded. I'm going to jump into the Templates tab on the right. Now, this tab has all of our pre-canned templates. We've built these out because we find that these are what clients really enjoy looking at when they're using our Excel add-in. So some of the most popular ones, we have something called the model portfolio comparison, a couple that we're going to go over today, the 2-page portfolio overview and the portfolio side-by-side comparison. All of these templates have a different use case, but they're great for looking at your portfolio and doing that analysis. As I scroll further down, we have a few other portfolio and individual holding tools. So maybe you want a 1-page equity tear sheet of your stock, and you want to just take a look at that in a quick, clean 1-pager. We also have some comparable analysis templates where you can take a look at different companies and see how they stack up against each other. As you scroll down, we have some macroeconomic templates. So the graph that we were looking at in the presentation of the Treasury yield curve, you can find that right here and download it. I'm just going to click on this preview here and show you that's exactly what we were looking at in the presentation. So I'm going to scroll back up here and download the two-page portfolio overview. All you have to do is click on it, and it's going to download the file here that you can open up. For the sake of time, I have it opened already so that we could just jump right in. Now, when you open up the two-page portfolio overview, you're going to see an input tab. On this input tab, you're going to be able to insert your portfolio exactly how it is based on weighting, dollar value, or shares. For my portion of how I have my holdings, I'm just going to use weighting because it's easiest to just take a look at that. Then you can actually name the portfolio as well up here, and I'm just going to name this 50-50 because I know that's the analysis I'm running here. Throughout this template, you have these different tabs at the bottom. All of them are going to give you a different portion of either returns, asset allocation, fundamental statistics. If you want to look at risk of your portfolio, equity exposures, all these tabs have all this data that's going to give you that portfolio total at the bottom and really show you that analysis of what you have inside of your portfolio. The best thing about this template, though, is the two-page report tab. If I click on that tab, you're going to see this printer-friendly report that's going to be ready to go as soon as you insert those holdings in there. Now, the great thing about this is you have all those other tabs baked right into this report. So as I scroll through this, you have a growth of $10,000 chart up here. You have some return and performance statistics. As I keep going, you have some equity analysis, sector breakdown, fixed income maturity breakdown, all sorts of things in here that are extremely valuable for users. And lastly, at the bottom here, you're going to have your top 25 holdings and some other asset allocation and risk statistics. The two biggest things, going back to our example of the analysis that a lot of you might be going through yourselves, is the first thing is return, right? We're looking at those retail ETFs. Maybe we're losing against the benchmark and we want to make some changes there in the retail space to see what we can change there. Next, if I scroll down to duration, which is under the fixed income portion, you can see that duration is around 5.3. Maybe we want to lower that a bit, get that to some lower numbers, which is why we were looking at that fund as a potential replacement there. Now next, I wanted to kind of shift gears and go into another template because this is great for looking at your current portfolio, really seeing where you're at, but sometimes you might want to talk to your client about making some changes and showing them a side-by-side comparison of what they have currently versus what they're potentially looking at if they made these changes. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of this template, and I'm going to open up the side-by-side comparison. Now, just another quick thing about how easy it is to use our templates. As you can see, I have the holdings in here already, but let's just say you pulled this holdings list off of your brokerage account or you just had it in an Excel spreadsheet. It's just as simple as copy and pasting these holdings from here and pasting it into the input tab here. We've conveniently shaded all the input portions in a light blue so that you can clearly see where you need to input those holdings and those weightings in here. As you do that, that data is going to quickly update and show you exactly what you're looking for. Now here, I have our current portfolio in here. I have the holdings, I have the weightings. The cool thing about the side-by-side is that when I go to the Model Portfolios Input tab, you can input a bunch of other portfolios that you're potentially looking at. For our current example, we have the proposed portfolio. So here's where we made those two changes, right? We made that retail change. We made that bond change. Those are the two that we're looking to see and get that side-by-side analysis. So when I go back to this input page and I scroll down, you're going to see this is where your model portfolio is going to be inserted. So when you click on this light blue box and click on that drop-down menu, I can select that proposed portfolio. As soon as I click on that, it's going to start working with our Excel add-in to load in that data. As you can see, pretty quickly, I've just loaded in that potential portfolio that I want to really look at. And you'll see that not only has this data been loaded into this tab, but it's going to be loaded into all of these other tabs here, as well as this two-page report that we're looking at. Now, this template is great for clients because you have your two portfolios right next to each other. I can see that the allocations here at the top are pretty much the same because we just switched out one retail ETF for another one and one bond fund for another one. But as you scroll down, you're going to start seeing a couple differences that are pretty clear and exactly what we're kind of going for this analysis. So just like the two-pager, you have a lot of this information like sector breakdown, market breakdown, maturity breakdown. The biggest thing I want to kind of look at is where we are in terms of our duration and where we are in terms of our returns. So when I scroll down the duration here, you can see that the current portfolio, which is what we had, is still at that 5.31, but the proposed one that we're potentially looking at is a lot lower at 3.64. The really interesting part, though, is the yield. You're not really losing a lot there, which is pretty interesting to see. Next, I'm looking at the trailing returns, which is the retail space, right? This was that big change we made. You can see that all of our historical returns are now outperforming in a way, which is pretty cool to see and pretty cool to show clients as well. I think this use case is great when you're talking to clients. Maybe you're just doing some internal analysis and you want to throw in some different portfolios that you're playing around with and really see the difference right in front of you. So these two templates have been great for a lot of people that are using Excel and using our add-in. The other great part about these templates is, let's say your firm has certain color schemes that they like using, or maybe you don't like a portion of the template and you want to make changes to that. You can actually contact your support team here, your account manager, as well as our Excel modeling team, and we can help you with those changes and really get this template to look exactly how you would like. Now, Excel is great. You can do a lot of things. You can make a lot of changes. What I want to jump into next, which is our final portion of this webinar, and that's really showing you what we're coming out with next. And it's called Model Portfolios. So I've already created one, and you'll see this rolling out in the next month or so to all of professional clients. If I click on Model Portfolios down here, it's going to show where I can create basically what I've created in Excel, but on the front end. So I created this portfolio already. I'm going to go ahead and search it here at the top of the page. As you can see, that's going to pop up just like any other security on YCharts. Now here's where it gets really cool. So just like any other security on YCharts, you now have your custom portfolio and all of its statistics right here in front of you to look at. So right here is just a quote page. You're going to have top holdings. You're going to have your allocations, your returns, your risk information. But as I move on, I could do a lot more things. I could jump into a fundamental chart and throw this portfolio against any benchmark I'd like or any other securities. I can also do cool things like going into the allocations and really break down what's in my portfolio. I think you're going to start seeing a lot of benefits with this as I'm going through this. This is very similar to what we have in Excel, but it's a lot quicker, a lot cleaner, and it's on YCharts.com so that you can really look at this in a clean and quick manner. So as you can see, I have a lot of different things like stock style exposure in here, bond sector, everything that we were looking at in Excel is right here as well. And the last thing I wanted to show you for this is the data tab, which is really cool. So if you're familiar with YCharts, when you go to the data tab, you can view a ton of financial data metrics for any security. For example, if you wanted to look at revenue for a stock, you can pull that up on this data tab. What we've done is we've created this data tab for your model portfolio. So let's say, for example, I want an annualized standard deviation with a 5-year look back of my portfolio. That's going to pull up just like any other security. So really cool stuff here. I just want to give a quick preview here to show you what we're working on and what's about to roll out, which we're really excited about. We are going to do a full webinar on this next month, and that will really give you more of an idea of how this works and how to build it out on your account as well. So that's really going to wrap up the content portion of the webinar. I'm going to pass it back over to Callie, who we actually got some questions that we're going to answer for you.
Thank you, Rushi, for showing us all the ways YCharts can be used to leverage portfolio holdings tools. Now, before we jump into the Q&A, I do want to mention again that a recording of this webinar will be made available in the support topics section of YCharts in the next day or so, just in case that you want to review anything we went over or to share it with your colleagues. And thank you to those who have submitted questions during the webinar. These are the few that really stood out to us and are very relevant to both new users and to those who are already familiar with the platform. Now, the first question that we had come through is, how can I get the YCharts Excel add-in connected to my computer?
Sure, so I can definitely answer that, and it's pretty straightforward for all of you new users here. If you hover over Tools and click on Excel, it's going to take you to the Download and Access tab. So right here, you can check within your Excel settings whether you have a 32-bit or 64-bit of Microsoft Excel. And right when you click this download button here, it's going to download a Excel wizard and the Excel add-in file, and it'll add it right to your Microsoft Excel. If you need any assistance with this in your current client, feel free to reach out to your account manager. If you have any questions as well, you can definitely reach out your point of contact, and we can help you get this on your computer.
Awesome. And then the second question that came through, and this is also a very common question that we receive, is it possible to create my own template using the YCharts add-in?
Yeah, I think here's another great benefit of our Excel add-in is, and I think it'll make sense to jump back into Excel. The awesome thing is it's just simply an Excel add-in, right? So if I click on the YCharts tab up here in Excel, we have these formulas that are baked into this template that we've created. But if you're pretty savvy with Excel yourself, you build out your own models or do your own analysis, a lot of these formulas are extremely intuitive to use, and you can build out your own models using the add-in. You saw how quick that data pulls in, so it's definitely worth doing that if you're interested in pulling in data into Excel and running your own reports.
Wonderful. And then the last question that we had come through is, what is the best way to view my portfolios on the front end of YCharts?
Sure. So, we looked at a few different things here today that would be great to use as portfolio analysis. One of them was Excel, which is a huge portion of YCharts. But now that we have this whole model portfolios tool, I think that'll be great for your analysis as well. A couple other things you can do is if I click on the YCharts logo here in the top left, it's going to take you to your dashboard. Now, what a lot of our users do is they load in their portfolios as dashboards here so that they can pull it into other tools on YCharts as well as viewing it quickly and cleanly anytime they log in. So here's that 50-50 allocation portfolio we were looking at. It's loaded in here right now, so I can do different things here. I can add different alerts. I can move into different tools using this watch list that we've created.
So this looks like that's going to be all the time we have for any support-related questions. And thank you, Rushi, for answering those questions. And thank you all for attending today's webinar. And be sure to stay tuned for future webinars. We are really excited for the upcoming model portfolio release. If you would like to get in on the list to preview the functionality, please reach out to your YCharts contact.